when you start serving your industry and you start shining the spotlight on the other people and you start giving, you will get to a point where you will not be able to outgive the market. The market always rewards those who lead in generosity.
Hello there and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nuske. I am your host. I am very, very excited today. You know, we've got guests and then we have guests. Now on today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming the CEO and founder of Up My Influence and Savings Angels, Mr. Josh Elledge. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Rick, thank you so much for having me.
Look, absolute treat to have you here today. Now, you and I are going to be talking about attraction mastery and how it can increase your authority, expand your platform, and build high-level relationships that count. But before we do any of that, Josh, there's certainly a lot that we can talk about. And so where are you calling in from today?
Orlando, Florida, where I live with my family. You know, we moved down here because we claim to fame. There's a lot of theme parks. We've got Disney World. We wanted to live someplace fun and someplace where we could kind of escape the humdrum world, get into the Disney bubble, the Universal bubble, and just kind of leave the outside world behind.
I tell you what, I'm a big fan of theme parks, and having been to the States numerous times, it's always a given that you need to go to Disneyland. Now, do you have a yearly pass? Is that your sort of thing? Or?
Always. Yeah. In fact, so we've lived here for about 16 years now. And while the kids were younger, we always had annual passes with them. And it's really interesting when you have an annual pass. The way you go is a little bit different than people that are only here for like 4 days and they have to do everything within 4 days. My wife and I today, our kids are older now, and so they don't go to the theme parks as much. My oldest daughter is now living in Colorado. But I'll tell you, my wife and I, we love going to Epcot. We love eating and drinking around the world and just having a great time, and we're quite intentional. I have to tell you about, when we experience things like this, we're quite intentional about not talking about work, not pulling up work on our phones, Slack notifications. I'm sorry, but they're just going to have to wait a little while. And I find that when I recharge myself and I truly unplug from the things I do every day, I come back a better person. Thank you, Mickey Mouse. I don't know what you got going on in your park, but it works for me.
Oh, I tell you what, there's nothing more exciting about life than life itself. And when you have that freedom, I know that having reviewed lots of your videos where you talk about having that freedom to live the life by design, basically, it really did strike a chord with me. And we're going to be talking about that in a little while. But beyond the theme parks, Josh, what are some of the local landmarks and other things that you really enjoy doing?
What, besides theme parks in Central Florida? Oh my gosh, it's a
there
wonderful
isn't
place.
anything.
It truly, I tell you, so interesting story. So we were living up in Michigan. We were living in West Michigan, and I had sold my house and because I was going into business startup, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. We were just renting a place. Well, it turned out that my other company, Savings Angel, did end up doing quite well. And so, it's a really interesting dilemma when you all of a sudden find yourself as being, if you've always been beholden to having to live in a certain area, and then all of a sudden, it's like, well, you can live anywhere you want. So it's like, we're like, I don't know, do we take a dart and just throw it at a map of the world and pick up stakes? So, we had come down here for spring break with our young kids, had a great time. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be fun? Again, we have some lifestyle freedom. We've had that. So at least in terms of a little bit of flexibility here and there. And I thought, well, I want access to beaches. I want access to fun things. There's really great nature. Now, I will say we're recording this and we are just getting into the absolute summariest of summer here in Orlando. And it's no joke. Like, you learn to go from air conditioning to pool and try to get there quickly.
Thank you again for the feedback. Now, I know that in all of this, as we're growing up, we go through, I guess, stages of our life that, lead us to the point where we are today. Josh, tell us a little bit about what life was like growing up for you.
we grew up very poor working class. And, I remember that, things were so tight that, my wife and I have talked about this a little bit, but, even having a snack in between meals, like it was just not an option for us. My mom and dad were very, very frugal, which I think kind of led to my first, I started a string of companies that didn't do well, but my first company that did do well was Savings Angel, which was all about frugality. And that's led to me, being in the media over 2,500 times and teaching consumer skills. But, I'm so grateful to my parents that, they never lived beyond their means. They had an incredible work ethic. My dad in particular, and he didn't, work to avoid his family at all. He was just had really great sensibility there. And so it was such a model for me that, if there's something, first off, taking care of your family and that whole thing, which I really appreciated, but I normalized being able to work harder than my peers. And that worked out pretty well for me growing up, because I could always outwork somebody. And I was always, I always had a part-time job. Even I joined after high school, I joined the United States Navy. I was a Navy journalist. And as soon as I was able, I still remember like getting a part-time job. And I just, could be a little bit personality, could be a little bit ADHD. You might pick that up in my voice tonality. But again, just very, very grateful. Parents are not perfect. They're always just kind of doing the best they can with what they know. And hopefully every generation, we aim to improve upon that. But I'm very thankful for their example.
Absolutely wonderful feedback. Now, in all of that, during those formative years, you've touched on your parents as, I guess, inspirations for you. In terms of the way you think, your mindset and your outlook on life. But later on, you also, in much of your content, there's a couple of things that I noticed that in somewhere in the content, you talked about ultimately becoming the wanted guest and not an unwanted pest. And, I think about other people like Jim Rohn as well. You got your Dan Kennedys and Jim Rohns to get what you want, help people get everything they want. Who are some of the people like that you look to today?
Yeah, well, I can tell you exactly who it is. When I was in the United States Navy and I was going to journalism school, which was a defense information school, when I had enrolled in or enlisted in the military, I'll be frank, I did not have many options. Like, I didn't have money for college. I just didn't see a path where I was going to be able to make it work. So I kind of followed the example of my grandpa and my great grandpa, and they were in the Navy. And so I thought, that's a great idea. I'll go be a sailor and I'll be a journalist. Journalist sounds like a fun job. And that was kind of the extent of it, right? I did a little bit of that in high school, but it wasn't until I met Adrian Cronauer. Now, Staff Sergeant Cronauer was featured in the movie Good Morning Vietnam, played by Robin Williams.
Wow.
Now, Staff Sergeant Cronauer, he put the love of serving audiences and the love and the sacred responsibility that we have, whether we're communicating with an audience through the written word, through our voice, on TV, however you serve audiences. And the biggest takeaway I had is he said, don't ever violate that trust. Even if you know his story, he got in some hot water because he had a crisis of conscience, and he chose to follow his conscience as opposed to the chain of command.
Yeah.
History ultimately vindicated him, but at the time he took heat for it. I think that is such a relevant message today in our social media world around maintaining your integrity and authenticity. Even if you want to make money, even if you've got your own goals and needs, if you fake it with people, we all know what you're doing. So you can't get away with it. Audiences have never been more skeptical than they are today. So again, our best tech is just to be always honest at all times and just recognize that we're all doing, like I said with my parents, right? We're all doing kind of the best we can with what we have. And, if I present, something and there's not a lot of interest, I trust that that's okay because people got their own stuff that they're dealing with. I'm just here to
Yes.
bring as much value as I can wherever I can.
Well, look, before we start shifting into the core of the call, Josh, I'm wondering, in the military, obviously, I'm a big believer in discipline. I teach my kids discipline. I think that's a deal maker and deal breaker if you don't have it. Tell us a little bit about the value of discipline for you.
So here is something interesting. I think that you will find quite commonly among those who took a few years or maybe many years out of their life to serve in a military environment. When I talk about this concept of, it's too hard, so I kind of gave up. Like that concept does not exist in the military. You don't just give up, right? It's possible you can renegotiate or reevaluate and, try to come up with a way. But, if there's a mission to be done, that's just it, right? So what it invokes is what I like to call is grit and tenacity, right? So it's, one of my favorite books, in recent history is Atomic Habits. And I love that because, it's a lot of times in accomplishing big things, it's not splashy. It's just, we find something that we do that we don't seem to get bored with, and we do it over and over and over and over. And I could illustrate this by saying over and over and over a bunch more times, right? But that's really where the magic is found. Doing it bored, doing it when everybody else quits, doing it when it gets too hard. And if you'll just be able to persevere a little bit longer, that is usually where the magic is found and where the treasures are found.
Great feedback, sage advice. Now, you touched on a book, Atomic Habits. What about the other one that I know is very close and dear to your heart, The Go-Giver by Bob Burge?
Oh, listen, if there's one book that you are inspired to read after hearing the sound of my voice, please go read The Go-Giver by Bob Burge and John David Mann. It will change your life because that is how people want to do business today. Again, when we approach people and all we can think about is what's in it for me, you've already broadcast your intention, right? So again, you can't fake this. You have to lead in generosity. And the Go-Giver is probably one of the greatest illustrations of this principle. So identify who it is that you want to serve. Identify who it is that you want to connect with, and then find ways to make it all about them. Truly give with your heart, and then don't do that with a mind that you want something in return. That doesn't count, because then that's just a transactional relationship. You can go to the store and buy things with money. It's no different, right? But what he would argue is that it's all about just serving you with your whole heart. And it's almost kind of like in the United States, we have a saying, it's like letting the chips fall where they may, right? You're okay with whatever the outcome. Now, here's the amazing thing, Rick, and this really gets to the core of what we do at Of My Influence, is when you start serving your industry and you start sharing your stage with and shining the spotlight on the other people, and you start giving in this manner, you will get to a point where you will not be able to outgive the market. The market always rewards those who lead in generosity. And I'll share this too. Leaders recognize the vocabulary and spirit of generosity. It's the language that leaders use to recognize one another. When someone is using the language of scarcity, we all recognize, oh, that's someone that's much earlier stage and they need to get their, they got bill, they're struggling with bills and they're struggling. And listen, it's not that we don't struggle with these things, but you still have to be able to separate your own wants, needs, desires, fears, concerns away from what it means in this current relationship dynamic that you're in. And you have to put other people first. And if you'll do that, then you give leaders the opportunity to reciprocate. Does that, so, and again, this is just such a powerful formula. Again, I'm honored with the network that we've been able to build up. That network is a safety net. And, quite frankly, it just empowers me to do about anything I want. It's who, not how. And again, if we'll just spend our time focusing on, the goodwill that we can give in other people, here's a local example. Like, let's imagine that you're a local real estate agent and you've got 200 people that really appreciate you. Like, you have just shown up as just a great neighbor, as a great friend, as a great steward within the community. Okay. It is, if you can get to that point, it is game, set, match for you, my friend, because you now have 200 people that when asked, who's a local realtor that you would recommend? And they refer you because they like you, they trust you, they know you, and you're the type of people that they would feel proud to introduce to. That's where you want to get to.
That's incredible feedback. I wonder, out of all these things, you do so many things very, very well. What's the one thing for you, Josh, that you do absolutely the best?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, what are you terrible at? Oh, here we go. I got a big long list of terrible things.
How long have you got?
I am mediocre at nearly everything in life, but there's just a few things that I've obsessed on and really geeked out on. And I dare say at this one specific thing, I'm probably the best on the planet at, and I do not say that in any sense of arrogance. It's just because I've been doing it over and over and over and over again for years and years and years and years and years, right? And that is this, all right? So for those who are service providers, let's say you're in B2B, you're a consultant, you're a coach, you're an agency owner, just something like that. And again, you appreciate a relationship approach to sales, and you've got a little bit of authority. If what you do is pretty valuable, in other words, you sell high ticket, I have the uncanny ability to fill up your schedule for the rest of your life. And we do that through a generosity first approach. You must give, right? And so the way that this looks is amateurs are spamming people's DMs, are spamming emails, are just selling in a weird, awkward way on social media, selling to family and friends on their Facebook feed. It's just like, that's kind of early stage behavior, right? When you just don't know what else to do. And someone told you that that's how you make easy automatic riches, is just to bombard people over the head. Or you believe that that is a necessary evil in order to do what you really love. You might be a leadership consultant. And you said, well, I would love to just do leadership consulting all day long. Well, you can't. You got to go drum up business. So then someone said, well, you got to do yucky stuff like bother people to try to find the one person out of 20 that is going to be interested in buying your product. I don't believe that. I think there's a far better way. And that's the thing that I do. So we leverage platform, and we use that platform specifically. We love podcasts. We love content creation. And you find ways to use your stage and shine your spotlight on other people so that you can earn time together with them in service. There is something so magical about being able to spend time together with another leader in service of other people. There is this magical thing that happens, and it ends up creating friendships. And here's the final part of this, Rick. I don't know if this is a long answer.
That's
Sorry
great.
about that. But here's one thing I've noticed. Leaders that like each other, they will find ways to do business together. They will search for ways to help one another, right? And if they don't immediately find a way to help one another, you'll notice they get a little frustrated, like, oh, come on, there's got to be a way we could, and I've seen this over and over and over again. But again, instead of reaching out with asks and reaching out like everybody else in the red ocean of pitching and all that other nonsense, be the giver. Go to the blue ocean, act like a leader, act like you don't need anything, and instead give leaders the space to reciprocate. Now, again, I think some intentionality is a little important. So you kind of need to know what's going on so that you can, suggest it when it's appropriate. But again, I think leaders are also very, very good at reading the room and knowing when it would be too early to make any kind of an ask, and knowing exactly when it feels completely appropriate to talk about great win opportunities for everybody.
Leaders are leaders for a given reason, for a good reason. And, you can't pull the wool over their eyes. That's for sure and certain, Josh.
You are right.
Yep.
Listen, to our friends, if you are selling to a sophisticated buyer, and you're frustrated that lead gen just doesn't work like it used to, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. And the reason why is because marketers have ruined it. It's not your fault. Right? It's just that, that's what people were told. And so we abuse good systems. So people abuse social media. LinkedIn used to be a lot better. Sales Navigator used to be a lot better of a platform until it got ruined. Now it's not so good. I'm nervous about AI. I think people are starting to abuse it in a way that's fake. And there are some really effective, very human ways that you can amplify your impact with AI. But unfortunately, a lot of lazy marketers are just being lazy. This is really good news. By the way, everything I'm sharing is such good news for those heart-centered, human-to-human leaders, because the amateur lazy marketers don't want to do this way of doing business. It's too much time. Takes too much effort. That's the perception anyway. But what they don't realize is that the greatest results come from slowing down and investing in key relationships. You need, if you have, 10 meaningful relationships with the right people can change your life. 100 casual followers, probably not. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, well, look, I tell you, the My Future Business Show is about, if you look under the subscript of the logo, it's helpful people helping people. And as a people person, Josh, I know that your mission is very clear to me and many others who are on the show today. But in all of this, what makes life worthwhile for you, and what do you want to leave behind? What do you want to be your biggest legacy, not only professionally, but privately in your family life?
Yeah, listen, I want to be the man that helped cut back on all of the spam, specifically in my my personality with Savings Angel, which again, is a syndicated newspaper columnist. I've been on TV close to 1,000 times. I work as a consumer advocate. In Up My Influence, I work as a small business advocate. I don't like seeing small business owners who just want to do what they love, kind of wrapped into bad practices and feeling like, that they have to sell in a way that's out of integrity or out of their value system with who they are. If there's anything I want to leave behind professionally, it would be that Josh actually did a lot of good work in the B2B world to cut back on all the insane spam that is going on that everybody hates. And instead, people started waking up to it really is just human to human. And if we stay in that territory, we're going to be just fine. One final illustration, Rick, on this. Listen, if you and I were to walk into a room, and let's say it was a mixer, and in that room, everyone has coffee, or they have wine or drinks or whatever. They're just milling about, enjoying it. It's pleasant, right? And we just start getting to know people. I don't know about you. That's usually where I like that kind of an environment is historically where I ended up getting most of my business from. Like, we all do okay when we're just relaxed and we don't have to worry about selling and marketing and people. At least for me, I noticed that. And certainly the kind of people that we work with, and we've launched over 200 podcasts, and those podcasts we use for this ability to connect with these types of people. But again, if you're worried that you don't have hypnotic sales copy or whatever, right? I don't know. Maybe you need that. Maybe you don't. I tend to think that people do just fine when they relax and just take a moment to connect and really be human with other humans.
I tell you, I'm taking so much away from this. You've given away the farm already with some of the gold that you've shared. So thank you very much, Josh. Now, I want to know, for the sake of context, for everybody who's on the show today, what was the genesis of Up My Influence? Where did it come from? Where did the idea spark?
The first iteration of Up My Influence was quite unintentional. Savings Angel was doing pretty well, became a 7-figure-a-year company. And so I had some time on my hands. And so I said, well, I'm going to go serve pro bono in our local startup community. So I started working with a lot of veteran-owned small business owners, minority-owned, women-owned small business owners, just helping mentor. And my claim to fame is that, I built that 7-figure-a-year company with 0 paid ads. Everything we did was just PR. It was just me serving audiences. And so while I was doing, this is an interesting lesson, while I was out just doing good in our local community, I started connecting with other do-gooders. And they saw, I was able to demonstrate my proficiency. And so I started getting offers for people to hire me so that they could get in the media as well. And even though I was a journalist in the Navy, I wasn't necessarily a professional public relations person. So I had to call up one of my friends who was, and I said, someone wants to pay me to be their PR consultant. Is that okay? Am I going to get in any trouble? He goes, no, take the money, man, do it. And so that was how Up My Influence started.
Yeah, fantastic.
Someone offered to.
Can you remember that moment where, the name came to you?
Well, the person I called was Jalen Christie, who was the head of the Public Relations Society of America in Orlando. And so thankfully I had him as a friend. I don't even remember who that first client was. It was about 8 years ago.
Yeah, no, in terms of the actual name Up My Influence, did you choose that or did you see that on a wall?
Up My Influence was the kind of the third name that we had kind of bandied about, went through a couple of other names kind of quickly. And Up My Influence just seemed to ring. And at the time too, we initially started off by, again, helping clients get media coverage, connect with influencers, get booked on podcasts. We were doing a lot of that work. Well, Rick, something interesting happened about 5 years ago. And why I always recommend to business leaders, stay nimble, listen to the market. You're not smarter than the market. I felt so we were having some good success, but I took my podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, and by the way, there are about 2,000 episodes of this podcast now. But what I ended up doing is I just started increasing the rate of my podcast episodes so that for the express purpose is it was a networking tool. I didn't mind investing into relationships with guests so that I could get to know them. And then maybe there would be some opportunities for us. I was just open to the outcome. Now, I had some pretty good services, so that was one possible outcome, but I was open to partnerships, collaborations, introductions, whatever. Now, this started working out for us pretty well. We started getting some good clients, and one of my clients said, hey, that's pretty exciting. Can you do that for me? So you can see where this is going.
Yes. I touched on the name because I think it leads into something much bigger, which is obviously related to content marketing, but people branding. I like to call it people branding. It seems to me that this is people driven first. So when when you have those sorts of things come into play, how is it that when you meet somebody new that you educate them and you bring them on board? What is the process for them if they've never been exposed to this sort of program before?
Well, we start as friends before we ever talk business. And to someone who's listening, I want you to rewind that back and listen to what I just said. We start as friends, and then we see if there's any business. I'm not even bringing it up on a first date. Like on a second date, sure, we'll kind of, figure out, what's going on, how can we help one another? Tell me about this. Like we learn about each other. And then, without presupposing anything, because I'm open to whatever the outcome is. And this is the amazing thing is, Rick, like conversion rate across the clients that we work with. Again, we don't work with everyone. It's a certain type of person that resonates pretty well with what we do. But in terms of like our clients who have big ticket offers and they sell anything from $10,000 services, in terms of ALV, all the way up to big 7-figure transactions across the board. Generally, our clients have about a 15 to 25% conversion rate on their big ticket offer. You have to slow down and just allow it to happen with the people that are in market. Some people are in market, some people are not in market. But as long as we can continually get more at bats,
Makes
we
sense.
just want to build way more relationships. So there's not a whole lot you can do to change the percentage of your audience who is in market. It just kind of is what it is. Either people are going to be interested and they're going to want to buy your product, or they're not. And that's okay, right? Then there's probably some things that we can do to improve our persuasiveness. I don't really worry too much about that. I'd much rather win the friendship long term than try to go for broke and then lose a friend because I tried to be super convincing or persuasive in a sales conversation. I'd rather just say, listen, we'll figure it out. We're both smart adults. Leaders are pretty good at advocating for what they want and need, right? Yeah. So then therefore, it stands to reason that the most important thing we could do is increase the rate at which we are introducing, we are making introductions with folks that fit our ideal customer persona, our customer avatar, or partner avatar, or investors, or influencers, is just find ways so you can spend more time in consistently and predictably, which is why I love leveraging podcasts, because you can extend a podcast guest invitation and people say yes to that because you're offering to celebrate them with no strings attached. You're going to be of service. You're going to do something nice for them. And it's a funny thing, Rick, when you do nice things for people, they look for ways to reciprocate back. As long as I mentioned earlier, as long as you give them the space to reciprocate.
Yes. And look, there are obviously lots of side benefits as a podcaster myself. I certainly am not one who you need to sell, that's for sure and certain. But in terms of outbound and inbound marketing, tell me the benefits, because I know outbound marketing can be awful. And I know, having watched a lot of your videos, in fact, I spent yesterday going through your initial video, which I thought was fascinating.
I'm honored.
Tell me a little bit about your inbound marketing views.
Well, I got to tell you, we have been 100% inbound since, as of when recording this, November 2019. So about 4.5 years.
Wow.
It is just an area of my business I just never have to worry about. And now that isn't because of some magical thing that I had. I really didn't. I started from scratch without my influence. I wasn't known as a marketer. But again, it took a while. It took me about 6 to 8 months to get 100% inbound. And all I was just simply doing is giving for free what the market was asking for that they wanted. And in my case, I like to work with B2B service providers, coaches, consultants, and agency owners who want to be known for what they do. I said, great, I'm just going to do that right now for free. And as a result, I earned that time together and they appreciated that. And I said, well, I'm happy to. And then they look for areas to reciprocate. I suggested, well, listen, maybe I could help with this. I certainly have some ideas. I don't know if I can help with connections. And I'm open to, again, leaders, once you do this a little bit longer, you have more to give, right? The longer you do this. So I will say today, I do have some advantages. I have a pretty good audience. I have some nice assets that I can bring to the table in terms of potential partnerships. So I say that only that for someone who's really new and just getting started, it gets easier the longer you do this. At the beginning, this is what I was doing. I was doing free press kits for people. I got on some big podcasts because I met them at a podcast conference and I say, hey, I just pulled up your website. I was looking for your press kit. I didn't notice that you have one. Listen, I've been listening to your podcast for like 6 months. I would be honored to have my team and I do a press kit for you for free. Now, some PR people listening to me would go, how dare you work for free and do that? Because I know exactly who I'm offering this free thing to, because I know that if I do something nice there's a strong likelihood that they might be able to, I don't know, ask if I'd be interested in being a guest on their podcast, which had happened time and time again. And I'm just, again, it's such a, what I'm describing is such an elegant way of doing business. It's an enjoyable way of doing business. Every aspect of this feels good because you get to give. That feels good. You get to let people know that what they do matters in the world. That feels good. And then you get to explore and see how we can create more, how we can create this 1 + 1 = 11 dynamic. It's all of this is quite enjoyable. Again, Rick, I'm admittedly very biased, but it's only because I've been doing this for 5 years, and there ain't no way in heck I would go back to, these awkward sales conversations, awkward lead generation, stuff that's out of my value system. No way in the world. I would rather just go get a job. And that's kind of like why I use this theme park metaphor is I escape the regular world to go to the theme park so that I can design my day, right? And it's like, why did we start a business? We just started a business so that we could escape a certain other type of lifestyle. So when you then get into your business and all of a sudden you're like, someone tells you, oh yeah, sorry, you got to do all this yucky lead generation. You got to spam people and you got to sell at people, like you're an Amway salesperson from the 90s when you're on Facebook. Like it just, all of that stuff just feels, I don't enjoy it. I mean, if you listen to someone who's listening to us and they don't mind any of this stuff, that's totally okay. I get it. But for people who are like hearing what I'm talking about and they're like, yeah, I get it. Like, maybe I might be able to help you with some additional ideas. I'd be thrilled to.
I see, a lot of takeaways here. There's a mindset shift that beginner marketers, let's call them marketers, because I think it's people first and forget traditional marketing essentially. If you look at what leaders think and how they behave, your mindset shifts automatically. But you've also talked about authenticity and in turn authority. But in terms of getting results, how important is consistency in all of this?
Well, right. That's everything, right? So once you find something, and this is atomic habits. What separates someone at the gym who is a champion versus someone who's clearly, more amateur level? Well, the person who is a champion, she or he just kept on going to the gym. That's it. I wouldn't say it's the only, it's the biggest differentiator. Sure, there's some genetic things and, maybe they optimize some other areas of their life, but for the most part, they just kept on showing up when everybody else got bored. So listen, 2,000 podcast episodes in with the Thoughtful Entrepreneur, I'm not bored. I'm loving it. And for whatever reason, not everyone's wired like that, but I found my thing. So yes. Because I genuinely like people, and Rick, I know this about you too. Like, I'm just curious. I'm interested in other people. Man, to our friend that's listening right now, if you are curious about people and you generally like people, even if you consider myself, I don't come across as introverted. Trust me, I would surprise you when I'm not in this environment. I'm pretty quiet.
Ditto. Oh, well, look, I often think about, what's the knock-on effect? And we talk about, as long as there's a need for communication, there'll always be a space for podcasting. That's my point of view, at least. And I think that it's such a authentic way to get the message across about how you can help others in your community. And I wonder, in all of that, the knock-on effect often would be testimonials and referrals. Is that the case?
I'm so sorry. What was that last part of
it? In terms of, the knock-on effect of podcasting and following your system, would the knock-on effect be the likes of testimonials and referrals for introductions to new people?
Well, and just describe for me, I'm sorry, knock-on is not a
knock-on as in a benefit. A benefit.
Oh, yeah. Well, certainly. But see, there are so many secondary benefits from podcasting. Listen, are there other things you could do? Sure. Right. You could throw an online summit and you could probably get some time with speakers, right? And that might scratch that itch. That's a lot of work in my experience. You could probably collaborate on video. There's several advantages to podcasting. Podcasting is a little bit more of a kind of a distributed network. So in other words, if someone wants to size you up very quickly, it's a little bit more difficult for them to do it. So they rely on other things like your brand, your image. Like if you're newer, podcasting is such an easier path. Simply because, it's like if someone says, hey, do you want to collaborate on YouTube? First off, they may or may not like video. Secondly, they're going to look at my YouTube count and go, that's okay. because mine is not that awesome. All right. But in the podcasting world, again, it's like, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? Well, here's another thing, Rick. I'm sure you know this full well, is for every decent interview show that's out there, particularly the business ones, there are thousands and thousands of possible guests that are looking to be on a show like yours. So supply and demand is so in your favor. Why would you not choose easy? These guests are paying big money to great podcast guest agencies, PR agencies, whom we love, because we provide their guests an exceptional experience on our shows that we've launched. We've launched over 200 of these. We have a good reputation there, right? So if you are willing to show up in generosity, there is a built-in environment, a network where just the supply and demand is so far out of whack. Come be a giver. And it's like, Augustus Gloop at the chocolate factory. I mean, it's all the chocolate you can eat. There's all the guests in the world that would love the opportunity to be celebrated on your stage. And then guess what? You'll earn time together. And then guess what? You'll probably end up talking with them afterwards. And guess what? You'll probably end up doing business in some way.
Yeah, great feedback. I'm absolutely loving this call, Josh. I cannot thank you enough. Now, when somebody sort of wants to know more and they're ready to engage and take that next step with Up My Influence, what's the process? And I know that it's multi-layered. There's a few things that are involved. You've got the community, you've got the Adventurers Pass, you've got the Podcast Leader Network. Explain it for us.
Well, it's probably a little too early to think about, engaging with us or, and from a transactional standpoint. But what I would recommend is if something I've shared sparks some curiosity and you're like, you know what, it would be nice to not have to have uncomfortable sales conversations. It would be nice to not have to worry about ups and downs from sales, because sometimes that's maddening, right? It's the number one stress that small business owners face is an unstable cash flow and cash flow issues. Well, so when you're in demand, you don't ever have to worry about that again. And so I'd love to help with some ideas. I teach this stuff for free. Listen, you don't even have to opt in. I don't need your email address. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I will teach you this stuff for free, right? And so if you go to our website, it's www.upmyinfluence.com. You're going to see a little button that says, watch my free workshop. It's an attraction mastery workshop. Watch that. I'm going to take about an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to share a lot of data that I didn't share on this conversation here. I'm going to share a lot of facts, and I'm going to share a lot more personal stories of kind of before and after. Here's what someone was doing before, then they started leveraging platform generosity and noble intent, and bam, here's what the results were consistently over and over and over again. So you can see it. So you might think, well, I wonder if he's ever worked with someone like me. Probably. If you're B2B in any way, I probably have. And I probably have a good story of someone and you can just copy what they do. You never have to work with me. It's okay. I trust you. But if you do see something that's of interest, sure, I'll give you a 14-day test drive or something. Like we cool. We're friends. I trust you. If you're listening to this, you're a business adult, you can make good decisions for your company, and I'm happy to help you however you decide.
Yeah, look, I love this. I love the fact that, you're putting people first. You're having a very attractive character, and I can attest to anybody who's on the show today that I've actually sat through a lot of Josh's videos, and I tell you what, you are going to take a lot of value away. Not only what you've seen on the podcast today, I'm hoping that there's been nuggets of gold for you, but also, as mentioned earlier, Josh has just shared his upmyinfluence.com website. You will find that link below this post, no matter where you find this call. I'm going to make absolutely sure that you have access to Josh and all of his wonderful videos and his other content. And with that all being said, Josh, this has been an incredibly fantastic, fun, enjoyable, insightful call. Thank you so very much for joining me on the My Future Business Show today.
Rick, thank you so much for having me. You're an incredibly generous host. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.